CJ, thank you so much for being on the show. I'm especially eager to talk to you right now, well, about two things. Your wine label, which I don't even know if you know this, but your people are sending me some bottles and I cannot wait to try it, the new rosé. And then I'm also very excited to talk to you about your NCAA tournaments, really two of them that put Lehigh on the map. And if you're okay, I want to start there because it was 2012. It put you on the national radar for sure. You had already won Conference Player of the Year a couple of years, but to make this run as a 16 seed and then as a 15 seed when you upset Duke, do you feel like now the further removed you are from that, and as you watch these games now, does it kind of hit you different thinking, wow, we really pulled that off?
Yeah, it's definitely weird watching the highlights, seeing the baby face, the jersey swinging. It takes me back to a lot of my collegiate memories, but it was a lot of fun, and I'm thankful for the opportunity and the experience to be able to play in the tournament. As you said before, I had success in my conference, but I think from a national standpoint, that stage is as big as it gets for collegiate athletes, and to be able to play against Duke, the Goliath, Coach K, the team that has all those NBA players, for me to be able to play against them and have success and be able to help my team win, it kind of stamped me as a guy who can play at the highest level.
You had 30, I want to say, in that game against Duke. Did you feel the pressure of this is an NBA audition?
Yeah, definitely. It's the opportunity you relish. Like, you look forward to a chance to kind of solidify. I always say, like, I always know who I am, and I think highly of myself, but that's your chance to kind of show people who you think you are. And if I would have performed not so well, I don't think my situation would have probably turned out the same. But from a pressure standpoint, pressure is, as the saying goes, pressure is, the single mother trying to provide for her children. Pressure is the person who is trying to figure out how their next meal is going to come. For me, it's just a basketball game that I played my whole life, and it's my escape. It's my happiness. It's my peace. It allows me to be able to potentially take care of my family, which is what I do now. But at the time, I was just thinking, I've worked hard. I've put the time in, just show up, and whatever is meant to be will be. And that's what kind of happened for me.
I know that GMs and scouts really look at your resume as a whole, but I cannot imagine at that age, and was that your junior year? Were you, 20, 21?
Yeah, junior year, I was 20.
So at 20 years old, I don't think most people can wrap their heads around that truly a life-altering night in that game. And you've got to think that caused a lot of separation for you. I mean, that's crazy. How would you describe that to someone who doesn't understand that?
Yeah, I mean, I went from relatively unknown to like Justin Bieber and like celebrities tweeting at me and being on ESPN, Sports Center, speaking to Charles Barkley, Shaq. So it was a little weird for me personally, because I'm just like a small school kid. I grew up in Canton, Ohio, small city, steel mills. You show up and you do your job and you go home type of mentality. So it was just more exposure for me to kind of be in the national spotlight, for them showing my highlights, to being talked about as an NBA player, to that actual summer. I ended up declaring for the draft. I ended up going back to school, and then I start the season off as a preseason first team All-American. So it kind of put me in the spotlight as a guy who is elite at his position, a guy who has a chance to become an NBA player, and someone who performs well on the bright stage.
It's just crazy to think the course of history, just how easily it could have gone another way. And then obviously you've deserved and proven yourself at this level. It's interesting. My husband played on the two Wisconsin teams who went to back-to-back Final Fours, played in the national championship, and then himself and Frank Kaminsky end up being the only players drafted from that team. And he always says, and I know Frank agrees, and I'm curious if you have the same experience, there's something very different about how much fun you're having playing the game at that level. In college, it's like your teammates are your roommates. Your parents are friends. They travel to games together. Your girlfriends are friends. It's just so intimate. And I'm just curious if you have the same experience as then comparing it to the NBA from just a kind of fun and camaraderie standpoint when guys are traded left and right all the time.
Yeah, I seen the Dekker. I thought that was you. But yeah, I think he's right. He's spot on. The experience you have in college is unique in itself, and it's unlike anything you'll ever experience. From the dorm rooms, I always joke, it's the only time in your life to where you have freedom with no responsibility. Your only responsibility is to go to class and to go to practice. There's no real repercussions for doing some of the things you can do as a professional athlete, that'll be in the spotlight. So I think that's the funnest time. Like you said before, the girlfriends are close. The parents are coming to games. I remember my mom and dad would come out for games. They come out for the conference championship. We go eat at the dining hall. You kind of do all of those things, and then you move off campus and get a house. And that's really the only time you have responsibility is to pay your rent, which you get a check from the team or a check from the university. But to now being in the NBA, the deadline just passed. You talked about guys getting traded. We had Gary Trent Jr. and Rodney Hood get traded while we're in Miami to the Toronto Raptors, who were based in Tampa, only to go play against them 2 days later. It was super weird. It was crazy, but that kind of shows you the business of basketball and how in college, like guys might transfer or coach might just leave, but very rarely do you have to worry about like your friends being traded within like the middle of the season.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I remember one time Sam played 4 years in the league and he was traded from Cleveland to Washington and they were playing the Wizards the next day. And he's like, I know I'll be in the building. I just don't know what jersey I'm wearing. Like, I really don't. It's just crazy. I don't think most people understand that dynamic of it. But all of your interests off the court, I think, make you so interesting to the average NBA fan, regardless of who your team is. I think a lot of people can get behind you and you've handled yourself with such class. And now this new project of the wine. Tell me how that even started, because obviously where you are in Oregon is such a hotbed for this and such a famous region.
Yeah, it started when my wife introduced me to it in college. Well, obviously, we were of drinking age. So she introduced me, and I wasn't a big fan of it. And as I pursued her and as I kind of matured and my palate kind of evolved, I began to like it more. You fast forward to 2013, I get drafted by the Blazers, and I taste my first Oregon Pinot. It was Walter Scott. It was volcanic soil from Bryant Creek. And I fell in love with it. I was like, wow, this is actually good. Like I hadn't tasted like high quality Pinot before. And I had no idea what volcanic soil even was until I read the label and like learned about it. But fast forward some more and I started going to like Chehalis Mountains. I started going to Willamette Valley. ET takes me to some wineries. Evan Turner, shout out to my guy. And that's when everything kind of turned. I became fascinated with it. I ended up, having a 600, 700, 800 bottle cellar. I started becoming a member at different wineries. And I told my agency, like, I really enjoy wine. I would like to learn more about it. Next thing you know, I'm having conversations with Adelsheim about a potential partnership in which I kind of get to pick the terms, what it looks like from an educational standpoint. I'm learning about wine, learning about the business of wine. Gina, the winemaker, would kind of walk me through the process of tasting different varietals, and potentially I'd be able to design my own label, put my own name on it, and start my own line. And here I am now with McCollum Heritage 91. I just put out a rosé, or a rosé will be coming out in a week. I had a 2018 Pinot Noir go on sale in September of last year. That sold out pretty fast. And I heard
it sold out in 45 minutes.
Yeah, it's
wow.
Crazy. This guy should have made more, I guess.
Yeah.
But that's kind of the process.
Heritage was your nickname as a kid, and that's
no. CJ. Well, I had a lot of nicknames, but CJ was probably the one. But I grew up on Heritage Avenue, so that was actually the street that I grew up on. So that's why I went with Heritage, and I'm just big on my heritage in general. So that's the Heritage. But my wife's favorite flower is the Anthurium flower, so that's the flower I put on the bottle.
Well, CJ, I'm actually kind of selfishly interested in the process of making your own wine, because it's something I've always thought I'd maybe get into down the road. I used to work at a vineyard in summers in college, and have always loved experiencing that, traveling to the Bordeaux Valley, Loire Valley, Chianti, and learning more about the business. So tell me, how do you even start curating your own bottle?
It's tough, but depending on what you're into, for me, it was more about education. I factored in two things, right? Quality of wine, like what type of wine is it? What type of wine do I like? What type of education can I gain from this? And then from a live sustainability standpoint, they're live certified, which means they care about the environment. So I wanted to make sure that I approached it in a way in which I'm not being a detriment to society. I'm also educating myself, and I'm able to enjoy a great product. And there's a lot of great options in the Willamette Valley and in the Chehalis Mountains, but Adelsheim just kind of made sense to me. It felt like an authentic partnership. It felt genuine. It felt like it was the right thing for me to do. And so far we've had nothing but pleasant experiences together and been able to collaborate on a lot of different things. So that was my process, but I don't think there's a wrong way to do it, because no matter what happens, you get to taste wines, which is always a plus. You get to learn about wine, and you get to educate yourself on the business of wine, which is a whole nother aspect that the casual drinker doesn't experience. Like now I look at bottles differently because I had to design a label. I had to get a patent. I had to kind of figure out what I would name things, what years I would try to put out, and then what varietals I would try to put out. So there's a lot that goes into it, but it's been a very rewarding process because I've been able to see from start to finish a wine with my name on it, with my taste preference, and then being able to share that with strangers has been a really cool experience.
Man, that is a dream. But a lot of people now kind of associate the NBA with it's like a mini wine club. Like, when did this happen? I feel like NBA players have now taken a hold of the industry, and you hear about, on the plane to games, drinking like extremely expensive, nice bottles of wine, or in the hotels. And obviously it's the coaches. I worked for the Atlanta Hawks for 3 years, and Mike Budenholzer is a big wino. He got that from Popovich. And then I would see the whole staff, but they're like, it's such an art. When did this happen in the NBA?
I think it happened over time as players began to mature, began to get more into the business realm. And I think they got more comfortable with the world of wine. It started with, older players talking about it in their interviews. Obviously, you got LeBron, you got CP, you got Jimmy, you got Melo, you got all these players who've been in the league over 15 years who've been exposed to a lot and now are comfortable with speaking on it. You got D Wade who has his own wine. You got the Currys who have their own wine. And now it's kind of expanding to where Josh Hart, Mo's partnering with Prisoner, JJ Redick's in the wine. He loves white Burgundy. Yeah. I have my own wine. So now we're becoming more comfortable with it because it's more socially accepted as opposed to, certain things that just aren't viewed the same. Wine is something that you can enjoy in a mature setting. You can do business. You can do it with teammates. You can do it with family and loved ones. And I think it's become more acceptable in our culture. As a Black man, we're more exposed to things. We're more aware of things. And I think in the NBA, guys are just more comfortable.
Well, I'd be remiss not to talk a little bit about this current NBA season. And I cannot wait to try your wine, by the way. So thank you very much for sending some my way. But just shortened season, so many games. You obviously had the foot injury coming back, and you have 16 games, I think, in April alone. What's the mentality of getting through the rest of this season? Because I don't think people know how hard it is on y'all.
Yeah, it's brutal. It's brutal. We're making do with everything, testing a few times a day, kind of going through that process mentally of staying out the way, trying to avoid, a positive test. And there's just scares that kind of happen on a day-to-day basis. But from a playing standpoint, like you said before, I'm coming off a foot fracture. We don't practice because you got testing, you got travel, you got games every other day. So it's just too hard to kind of put everything together. So I'm basically getting into rhythm in games, which is trial and error, some great moments and some terrible moments. And then physically, you're just exhausted. We flew from Portland to Miami. We landed. We had a lift, and we had 8 a.m. testing, which is 5 a.m. Pacific time. We played a game that night. We had a back-to-back play in Orlando, and then we flew to Tampa to play Toronto. So the schedule, like you said before, 16 games in April, back-to-backs just about every week. There's no real time to rest. So you just got to pick your spots. You got to get treatment. You got an ice tub, massage. I got dry needling scheduled for 12:30 today. So just kind of going through that process. But then also for me, being able to step away from basketball has been extremely important. So meditating, I have wine, not only to drink, but projects that I'm working on to where I can kind of escape. And I'm big on healthy hobbies. So things that are healthy, but also make me happy. So sometimes they're not healthy, like eating French fries, they make me happy, but then also like hot yoga. So being able to do those types of things kind of gives me an escape to where I don't look at the schedule. So like for you telling me that it's 16 games, like now I know, but I don't look at the schedule past 3 games. So I look at the next 3
games. You didn't know that?
No, I didn't know. I avoid it.
Maybe I shouldn't have told you.
That's okay. Don't worry about it.
But it's just crazy the struggle that it is. And I feel bad for these college athletes too, watching them, especially teams that are losing in the first round. Everything they had to do to get there. just brutal on these guys. It's never been worse, I think, to be a college athlete. So it's so great to see the team celebrate and continue to advance. Do you have a team you really like now? Are you able to watch much?
I haven't been watching. I got some friends that coach in college and some friends that play, but I wanted the what was it, Oral Roberts?
Yeah,
small
you
school.
Got it.
Look,
Yep.
they had a young player, number 3. He was pretty good, so I was hoping they would win. They end up losing. So now I don't really care what happens. I think, is Michigan out of it? Like, I don't even know.
No, Michigan's in. Playing
So
the
I
Elite
hope Juwan Howard does well. So
Yeah.
I like to see them win. Other than that, I don't really care.
All right. So CJ, what am I going to expect when I have your rosé? Tell me what
That's
the
a great
taste
question.
notes I'm going to get.
I love strawberries, so you'll definitely have hints of strawberries. There's a little bit of lemon in it, some plush. It's super smooth. Everything I do is smooth.
You're Mr. Smooth.
I'm Mr. Smooth, but Gina is super smooth.
You're also
Gina's
very humble.
Thank you, super humble.
I'm kidding.
Gina, the winemaker she's elite, and I always joke and say she's like the one behind the scenes that makes all my dreams come true. I have an idea of how I want something to taste. I have an idea of how I'd like something to be presented, and she outdoes herself every time. So she's like the left guard that protects Tom Brady. Doesn't get a lot of credit, but without the left guard, there is no Tom Brady. And I think that's the winemaker in all industries, the one that's behind the radar, doesn't get a lot of credit, but does all the work. So it's compliments to her. She just brought a lot of what my wife and I wanted to see to light, and without her, there is no Heritage 91, and there is no great rosé. So I hope you do enjoy it. I've enjoyed it. It's very fruit forward. The bottle is pretty. Compliments of the design team, because I just told them what I would like to see, and they made it happen.
Last question. If Gina's the left guard, I assume you're Tom Brady in this scenario. Who is your wife? And I love following her on Instagram, by the way. Y'all had the most beautiful wedding, and she kept whipping out all these new looks. I was like, and it was in Vogue, wasn't it in Vogue?
Yes, it was. It was
incredible. And she's beautiful.
Thank you. I appreciate it. That was fun. That was a lot of fun. The small COVID wedding, but we got a lot of pictures in, a lot of outfits in. But I mean, honestly, if you're talking about in the household, then I'm not Tom Brady. I'm more like I might be Gronk or somebody. Or if I'm Tom Brady, she's what's his name? Bruce Arians.
Former Bill Belichick, but she seems a little bit nicer than Bill Belichick. Maybe she's Bruce Arians.
If I'm the quarterback, she's the head coach.
Love it.
So that's kind of how that goes. But no, it's been fun. It's been a great process. We've learned a lot, and I'm looking forward to continue to expand. And I would have never put out a wine if I never met her, because I would have never probably dove down this path, honestly. So I'm thankful that she's been able to help me, and I'm thankful that I could put a wine out in her honor with the Anthurium flower on it.
That's very beautiful. Thank you so much. What a great story too. Thanks for kind of taking us on a deep dive into that process. That's awesome.
No problem at all.
Well, best of luck moving forward to you and the Blazers. It's going to be an exciting finish. Going to be an exciting April. Can't wait to see how you all do, and stay healthy. And thanks again for your time, CJ.
No problem. I appreciate it. Tell Sam I said hello. I think he's still in Europe. My brother is in Moscow. So I know those lonely nights. So I tell him I said stay with it. And I'm probably going to see my brother when the season's over or next year.
That's really awesome. That's the toughest part about the European season is how long it goes.
It's brutal.
So I go over, he's in Turkey. He was in Russia last year. I go over to see him about once a month. So I'm kind of fitting it in between work, but yeah, it's definitely a grind. And especially with COVID, it's tough on these guys. So I feel for your brother too.
Yeah. He's 11 years in now. He's seasoned. So he's used to the loneliness, but his wife and his kid are out there now. So he's good. Yeah.
That's the trick. I think the happiest guys playing in Europe are the ones who kind of make it home, take advantage of the situation, have their families come out. And so yeah, Sam and I are still figuring out that one.
You got time.
I don't know how to be out there. Yeah. Thanks again, CJ. I know you're busy. We appreciate this.
No problem. You guys have a great one.